foreign leader and mentored them and coached them on how to get a better deal from our president. That should be treasonous.
How is it not?
How is it not? A bit, because recently I saw that we had ordered, depending on where, 2,500 troops initially, boots on the ground, with possibly another 25 behind them. Did you see that?
I saw 2,500 Marines going on a MEU.
I saw 2,500 on a MEU that were going to look at maybe putting boots on the ground on Carg Island. We'll see. Again, all of this could sound to an armchair quarterback sitting there in the living room, well, like, yeah, let's send in the Marines and we'll secure the area, right? Just to give people a little background here. Afghanistan, I think all of us would agree, was a debacle. Afghanistan has the moniker of the place where empires go to die. You cannot conquer it. It is mountainous. It is tribal. There's so many places to hide, so much to do. It's a brutal landscape, right? I don't think people understand that Afghanistan is bordered with Iran. A lot of Iran is the same, and Iran is not a small country. It's weird because of the way we do the Mercator projection on the maps. You look at it and it looks like, well, that's not very big. If you take it and you put it between the parallels, the latitude parallels, and you move it over to the U.S. and scale it the same, it's like half the size of the U.S.
Wow.
The thing is huge. And a lot of that is mountainous terrain, exactly like Afghanistan, except unlike Afghanistan, they have a fully functional government. They have a fully functional, coordinated military. Do you think we're going to put boots on the ground in Iran? That's not going to happen.
I mean, they've even stated publicly that they're waiting for that. They're ready.
Yeah. Oh,
it
yeah.
almost sounds like they're anxiously awaiting that.
Bring them on. We fought the Iran-Iraq war. We know how to fight in this region. These are our mountains. This is our military. Bring it on. And you know, which is more difficult to do? Go on an offensive or defend? It's always easier to defend because you get everything there. You know where it is. You're ready. You've mapped out. They have to move. You just have to stay. And that would be absolutely disastrous for us to put boots on the ground there.
I mean, they were the innovation for a lot of the weapons that the Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda were using. They were the innovators. They were the brains behind it.
And this is where a lot of their proxy support came from. The Iran-Iraq war in 1980 taught them that they don't want to fight on their own ground. They can, and they're ready to. It's easier to fight on someone else's ground. The U.S. does the same thing. We don't want to fight on our land. We want to go over and fight on your land, right? And Iran really took this to heart, and they started building more of their military based on engagements outside of their homeland. They invested heavily in missiles. They invested heavily in drones, right? Because they want to project and get the battle away from them, right? And they did. They have perfected a lot of this technology, and they perfected it in a way that it creates a problem for us. If nothing else, an economic problem. They're using Shahed drones, right? We've seen them on the news. You've seen them used. A Shahed drone costs $20,000 to $35,000 to build. We shoot them down with a Patriot missile system. Patriot missile system costs $4 million for one missile. $20,000, $4 million. It's a 200-to-1 ratio. We are spending 200-to-1 to their cost. They can keep that up a long time before we can. We estimate we spent $4 billion in the first week of the Iran war. $4 billion of munitions that just go bang and they're done. Which gets back to the whole point, who wins? Well, now we have to resupply that $4 billion. So, hey, Boeing, Morton Thiokol, whoever, here's a $4 billion contract. We need more weapons. So our military industrial complex gets immediate contracts to resupply all of these weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And again, did that help us? Are our gas prices lower? Are food prices lower? Do we have better health care? Do we have better services?
Are we safer?
Are we safer? The benefit to the Americans living in America is 0 to negative. Who benefited? Israel benefited. So it's difficult to look at this any other way than to say we are fighting this war with our munitions and our people and putting our people at risk. Last number I saw was 13 Americans dead for Israel. I don't know any other way to interpret that.
I don't either.
And that is a sad comment.
What really scares me about Iran is their proxies, Hamas, the terrorist organizations.
Yeah.
The sleeper cells that are supposedly embedded all over the United States and what that could look like. And I don't, I think, what, I don't know how many attacks we've seen since, but what ODU in Virginia just got hit. Somebody yelled Allah Akbar. Who knows if that was that or not. But when I bring on Sarah Adams and she talks about the sleeper cells that are all over the U.S. Now, do I think they're going to hit no matter what? Yeah, if they're here, yes, I think they're going to hit no matter what. But does this give them a lot of extra motivation? Absolutely. And so, I just want to paint a scenario real quick. I mean, they're talking about simultaneous attacks. That doesn't, simultaneous attacks throughout the country. One in Dallas, one in New York, one in Chicago, one in Nashville, one in Miami, one in Los Angeles. Now, what if they have simultaneous attacks inside of each one of those cities and it all happens simultaneously to suck up all of the resources and the contingency plans with the police and the first responders, So if they do simultaneous attacks in LA and they hit a hospital over here, and then 30 seconds later they hit a school, and then 30 seconds later they hit a university, and then a preschool. I mean, there's going to be gridlock. Nobody's going to be able to respond. That's one city. Oh, and then you think about all of, all these major cities in the United States, what that could actually look like.
Yeah.
It'd be a hell of a lot scarier than missiles. Because there's true terror.
It is. When I was studying terrorism, one of the things we studied first was, what is the goal of terrorism? What's the goal? And what I remember, and when I was studying it, and quite honestly, the definition may have changed these days, but the goal of terrorism was to make a populace feel that their government could not protect them. So what you want to do is you want to go in and do some act and go, oh my God, this happened, right? The best thing to do as a terrorist then, and you need news coverage of that. People need to know you did it. And then what's going to happen? The government is going to increase security, right? And then do another one. That shows the people that even when the government tries, they can't stop us. And this is regular, just insurgent tactics, right? So could that happen in the U.S.? Could. I kind of go back a little more pragmatically though and say, how would that benefit? That's a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of investment. What's the actual benefit from that? Let's say Iran did that. What would our response be? If we could prove Iran did it, our response would be an all-out attack on Iran. Iran knows that. Would it help them? I don't know that it would. I would think a rational war planner, you've always got to ask, if you're going to do something and you're going to expend assets, what's the benefit? And the benefit has to be greater than the assets expended.
Well, I mean, are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
What do I think the benefit
yeah,
is?
What do you think?
I think that this is a religious war, and I wanted to get in this more towards the end. We just killed their fucking pope. They're pissed. They're extremists. They're Shias. They are extremists. Their goal is to get to heaven. How do they get to heaven? Come over here and pull a jihad. That's what I think the goal is.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Why is that?
In Islam, if you die while you are doing God's work and doing good things, you are shaheed and you go to heaven. If you die doing things that are not in the best interest of the people and are against righteousness, yeah, you don't go to heaven. That's not considered something that's good. I don't think Iran looks at the U.S. as the big Satan. They say that and they chant death to America. Why? Because we're bombing them. And we should get into this. We need to look at the history. You want to get into this now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's look at Iran, right? So first, most people know Iran was Persia, right? Some people don't know that. I say that and they're like, what? I thought Persia was a fictional area. No. It was Persia. It was renamed Iran in 1953. 53 or 35. I might have those mixed up. But anyway, because Persia was an English name that we used. The internal name that they used was Iran, so they renamed themselves as Iran. What a lot of people don't realize was after the Persian Empire fell and Iran was a growing country, they were our number one ally in the Middle East. People don't know that. Right now, we say Israel is our only ally in the Middle East. It was Iran. We had the largest embassy ever in Tehran. We ran the CIA headquarters out of Tehran. CIA headquarters for all of the Middle East and Asia was all based out of Iran. That's how close we were with them, right? Now, what happened? Well, first thing that happened was they had a prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, right? In 1953, in 52, Mossadegh nationalized their oil and said all of this oil belongs to Iran. Prior to that, Great Britain had been mining and pumping most of their oil. The United States, CIA and MI6 did a joint venture. United States called it Operation Ajax. MI6 called it Operation Boot. You can look this up, right? We orchestrated a coup. We got rid of Mossadegh and we took him out of power. In his place was Mohammad Shah Pahlavi, right? He was the Shah. Pahlavi, thanking the U.S. for getting him back into power, signed over 40% of the oil fields to the U.S. and Great Britain.
40%.
40%.
Wow.
Now think about if somebody signed over 40% of American farmland to another country. Americans would be pissed. Iranians were not happy. Now, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi was actually in power as a figurehead, kind of like the king, if you will, in Great Britain, and Mossadegh was the prime minister. Mossadegh got more power. We took Mossadegh out. Pahlavi takes power again, and he became pretty brutal. He had the Savak military or intelligence. He was a brutal ruler. Iranians were getting fed up. Iranians are like, we're nothing but an American puppet. American CIA and MI6 came in, removed our prime minister that was democratically elected, put the Shah in power. The Shah is being brutal. We're giving away all of our oil to America. America's running their CIA out of our country. They had a revolution, 1979. We're all familiar with that. 1979, they have a revolution and say, we're kicking the U.S. out. We want to be our own country. The oil belongs to us. We don't want you here running your politics out of our country. By the way, the students that took over the U.S. Embassy tried to shred all sorts of documents. They went and pasted them all back together, and they've got all these documents from the CIA pretty much validating all of this, right? So after that happens, it's a pendulum swing. It was very secular, not very religious, and they're like, well, that didn't work. So in 1979, they said, we're going to put in a religious leader. And the pendulum swung over here, right? And that's where we're at pretty much today. So if you look at that, this is not a country that's just out there by themselves that said America is evil. This is a country that America orchestrated a coup in. This is a country that ran their CIA from their country and who took most of their oil. I am not defending them and saying that they're the good guys, but our hands aren't clean here, right? So when they come back now and they're like, okay, we're not even going to do anything. But then Israel comes and says, hey, you need to get rid of Iran. They don't like you. They're against you, right? And they kind of like fan the flames. And those flames are already there from before. But it's important to understand the history of how we got here. Because I don't think anybody wakes up one day and says, I don't like this country. I don't. Maybe some people do. But anytime there's a country that we don't like or that doesn't like us, we should always go back and ask why. What happened? What happened that made this animosity? And I think it's always important to go back to that and understand that, because that understanding is going to drive how we act in the future. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
So right now, does Iran want to take over the U.S.? They don't. They don't want to come here. They don't care about, they want to be left alone. We're not leaving them alone. Israel isn't leaving them alone. And Israel is our new best friend. So let's go take out Iran.
If you've ever hunted, you already know how good venison is for you. It's performed as using experiment heard of single day flavors. No order. Listen, first order. Does Israel want us out of the Middle East?
Eventually.
Why?
They want to be a superpower all on their own. Netanyahu came out, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and said, we want to wean ourselves away from American support.
I saw that too.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, again, within the last 6 weeks, he was doing a speech. It's in Hebrew, but it is translated, where he said, we will be the superpower in the Middle East. And that means not using us. That means on their own.
Are they in talks with China?
No idea. No idea.
There's a lot of speculation that that's going to be their new best friend.
I heard something about a year ago about them talking to China. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, well, they've used us up. Let's go to the next one and see what we can get from them.
That's exactly what crossed my mind too.
Yeah.
And they had mentioned, if I, that they had mentioned that they will help China with their tech. I don't know if they need help with their tech.
Israel's is unabashedly and unashamed opportunists. Whoever's going to help them is their friend. Whoever isn't helping them is their enemy. It's that easy. And right now, we're the host and Israel's the parasite living off of us. And eventually it'll eat you up until you're dead, and then it'll move on to another host. That's a sad comment to make, but that's,
it seems
if
like
you,
we're
if you
about
just
dead.
if you just follow it, if you just look at what's happening, that is what works. That's the answer that works.
Have you seen this clip of Netanyahu talking about Rome,
I saw part of that.
where he says we won't lose this time, and a lot of speculation is saying that the United States is the new Rome.
We're Rome, yeah. So historically, there's also some religious texts and whatnot that mention Rome, the powers in the West, and they use Rome. That doesn't mean they mean Rome in Italy. We are the new Rome. We're the empire that was the Roman Empire, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And again, I always have to caveat a little people because we didn't come from Rome. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what Rome was at the time, we are today,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're the empire that has the greatest amount of power in the world.
So is there a long-term goal to take us down?
Tough to answer that because we talked about the last time, no empire has lasted forever. You don't have to take an empire down. It will eventually eat itself. The question is not does the empire survive? No empire has ever survived. The question is what does it become? Does it decrease gracefully to a sustainable power that continues to be relevant in the world? Or does it implode completely and disappear? That's the question. And history has examples of both of those. Every empire in history has ended. Some have ended gracefully and become powers that remain. Great Britain was an empire, right? Pax Britannia. They held the peace. They were the policemen of the world, right? They were everywhere. They declined. Still a powerhouse, still a viable, powerful country, not a world empire anymore. There are other empires, the Roman Empire, completely imploded and gone.
Mm-hmm.
There's examples of both. As a historian, I look at this and say, eventually, the U.S. empire, as an empire, will end. Our question for us is, do we end by pulling back and not being an empire, but being a strong country, which God, I hope is the case, or do we just charge until we just run out and we completely start over from scratch and we're something else? Then who knows? I love the United States, and I hope that we have the intelligence to just pull back a little, focus on the United States, and be a superpower without being an empire?
I don't even think that's a possibility. When you look at all the conflict that we're involved in and have been involved in,
Yeah,
I mean, Ukraine, Venezuela,
yeah.
Gaza, Iran, Taiwan. What am I missing? That's
Pretty much
just
go all over
today.
the world.
Yes. But I just, now we're talking about Cuba already.
Yeah,
We're what,
yeah,
3 4 weeks into this, what, 3 weeks? 3 weeks into this war with Iran.
yeah.
And now we're
How far
already,
were we into Venezuela before Iran? 3 4 weeks. Oh, don't forget Greenland before that. We haven't attacked them yet, but Greenland, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba. Don't forget that we said we were going to take back the Panama Canal.
mm-hmm.
It's, Sean, it's crazy.
What is going to happen to our economy? Not just the, what's going to, let's start with the U.S. economy. I mean, what happens if we have pissed off the GCC so bad that they decide they're not going to trade oil in U.S. dollars anymore?
There is a huge, huge concern. And again, I don't think a lot of people understand why it's important. And again, you hear this from me over and over. You have to go back and look at the history a little bit. You have to know how we got here. The U.S. used to be on a gold standard. And what does that mean? It meant for every dollar you held, it was backed up by gold, right? Well, we went off the gold standard. So what is a U.S. dollar backed by? It's backed by the belief that the U.S. is good for it. A dollar bill, a $10 bill, $100 bill, whatever, is a promise. It's an IOU that says you're going to give them something back that's worth this much, right? If it's gold backed, that means I'm going to get that amount of gold for this. If it's not gold backed, it just means we all agree that this is how much it's worth. Well, that can change overnight. What if we all agree it's not worth that? And right now we use it to trade oil. Every country trades oil in dollars. There's some talk about why that is. And if you look at the Confessions of an Economic Hitman, he talks about how we signed agreements with Saudi Arabia and others that said they would trade in US dollars. That forced the US dollar to have value because you could trade it with oil and everything else, right? But now countries are a little tired of that. By the way, again, this is all one big spider web. Going back to Libya, Gaddafi wanted to form a new currency for Africa called the unit, right? That would not use US dollars. That was sacrilege, couldn't have that. That's another reason we attacked theirs. We couldn't have that. Now, what's the big threat to the US dollar? BRICS.
Mm-hmm.
BRICS wants to get off of the US dollar and have their own trading units that is not US based.
Last time I checked, that went from what, Russia, or Brazil, Russia, India, China. Now I believe what there's, the last time I checked, there was 22 more countries.
Yeah, people are signing on.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, you hear these conversations, that they have to be happening. I mean, China is engaging other countries and literally saying, hey, we don't have to put up with this shit.
Right.
This is how my wife and I disrupted a billion-dollar t-shirt industry. We set out to make them like they used to.
We don't have to. And it's one of those is like, hey, kind of in secret on the side, it's like, let's you and I agree that we don't have to use American dollars. And as soon as enough of us agree, we'll just stop and we'll switch over to this. But we need enough of us first to make the switch. So right now there's still talk. of let's get enough of us so that we can all agree and then do the switch, right? Also, though, you've got a lot of tie-ins with other countries have invested in the U.S. They own buildings, they own land, they own companies, right? So if our economy tanks, their investments tank. Everything is so interconnected. It's not just an easy, we're going to pull out because we're also going to take a hit then. But then these other countries have to look at it and go, which is worse, this hit or the long-term, stability and freedom to do what we want without someone else telling us what to do.
The movement's growing. BRICS is
That
growing.
movement around the world is growing.
I'll bet it's going to grow real fast now. What does that look like, though? What does it look like if the Middle East no longer trades their oil in U.S. dollars? What does that mean for us?
I don't know. I'm not an economist, and the little I've read, not good. Our dollar value compared to other currencies would decrease. Could decrease to the point of the dollar being worth pennies on the dollar right now. Now, run that out with people's 401ks, retirement. What happens when all of a sudden your retirement is worth 1/20th that you thought it was? That becomes a big issue. That becomes an issue for us as a country, buying goods, services, and food from other countries. It becomes an issue for us as individuals. We're like, hey, I thought I was set up and I had this much value and now I don't. What do I do? It has an issue for young people saying, well, how do I start a family and grow and if what I have is not worth anything? And there are people a lot better versed on this and the economics than me to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
But not something I would look forward to.
I mean, they're talking about a global depression. A global depression.
Could be, because everything's tied together.
Do you think there is a possibility that they're not... Do you think there's a possibility that all these recent attacks on other countries, pulling Maduro out, Iran, do you think that this is a attack on China's energy? They get 75% of their oil from the Strait of Hormuz. Then there's Venezuela. We snatch them. I'm just asking, I'm just asking if maybe we don't have a full picture.
Oh, I don't think we do have a full picture. I think by design, we don't see all of it. The internet has been great in that we get a lot of information we didn't used to. It's horrible in that it's also easy to hide some of the information. You have to really go dig for it to try and find some of these things, and a lot of it is still hidden.
I don't think that. But I'm also trying to think of ways that something that may be a little bit more positive other than we're under Israeli influence. And so even go back a little bit farther, the Panama Canal, which was supposedly controlled by China.
A Chinese company.
We
Yeah.
fixed that.
Yeah.
We pulled Maduro out. Now we've bombed the shit out of Iran and they closed the strait.
So you're asking is there a possibility that this is a planned, orchestrated
It's China,
series
the
of
bigger
events
picture.
in order to contain China?
Mm-hmm. It's China. Now, on the caveat to that, I mean, they're investing, from what I understand, heavily in nuclear capabilities. So I think that would just speed that up, and they don't have to deal with all the fucking red tape that we have to deal with. So I think that would be a, relatively easy pivot for them.
I think it would be an easy pivot for them. And per capita, the U.S. consumes more in oil per person than China does by far. It would hurt us more than it would hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we're looking at ways to contain China, I wouldn't see this as a advisable path. There's too many things that can go wrong and too many things that'll destroy an economy as a side effect. You know what I'm saying? And look at what they're doing with chip manufacturing and robotics and drones and whatnot. I don't think we would contain them by this. It'd be wonderful to think, hey, somebody has a grand plan here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody's got this figured out. I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, it's a friend of mine, my attorney actually brought that up to me, and I said, I don't think that, but I hope you're right. I hope there's a broader plan here than what seems to be the obvious. But
there's lots of times I hear some of these, I'm like, God, I would love to believe that.
yeah,
But call me skeptical.
yeah.
And again, I don't want to sound always doom and gloom, right? That, all of this is bad, everything is falling apart. There's still a lot we can do. America is still, in my opinion, the best country in the world, right? Look at the people we have, look at our land, look at our resources. We have a lot of oil, right? We have food that we export. Our problem, if you will, is we have stretched out so far to try and extend our power and control that we're starting to lose the whole reason for having that power and control, and that is the lifestyle and benefits to American citizens. And that's why, personally, I am a proponent of pulling back some of what we're doing worldwide and concentrating on America. Let's make sure, and again, Iran, is this helping anybody here? I can't see that it is. We're spending a lot of money and we're not benefiting Americans. We're benefiting Israelis, certainly not benefiting Iranis. I want to benefit Americans.
Or any of the other Middle Eastern.
Or any of the rest of the Middle East.
Or the world.
Or the world. So let's concentrate on us. That's where I want to go with this.
I think we leave that section for the end.
All right.
But let's take a break. But before we do, I got a Patreon.
Of course.
They're the reason we get to be here today. And so this is from Zach Walton. What does victory in Iran look like? The president's 4 objectives are to stop the production of ballistic missiles, prevent nuclear proliferation in Iran, destroy the Iranian Navy, and prevent Iran from funding proxies. To achieve these objectives, is there any outcome except regime change to a Western-friendly regime?
Who put this in?
Zach Walton.
Zach, great question. I love it. Because as a military person, you always want to know, what's the goal? Why am I here? And more than that, when am I done? When I hit this threshold, when this happens, I'm done. And the one thing we don't want is forever wars where we don't define what done is. I apologize if I'm repeating myself. I was talking to some people beforehand. I've been talking to people every day, and I keep saying the same things, and sometimes I'm like, who did I say this to and who didn't I say this to? But we have to know what done is, right? And Zach was right. Those are the 4 objectives that were stated. And you and I, when we were starting this, we talked about 3 are very measurable, 1 is not. So let's talk about regime change. We did it. We killed their leader. They put in a new one. How'd that work for us?
Not great.
Let's kill this one. Guess what they'll do? Put in a new one. How will that work for us?
This is exactly what we did in the Afghan war.
It is.
I think there was a time period when I was in where the number 2 in charge had a 2-week life expectancy.
Yeah.
And it was just a revolving door.
Yeah.
Didn't change a damn thing.
And then people say, well, we need to really do a regime change. And by the way, I always take a little offense at regime. It's a government. We call it a regime when we don't like it, but it's a government. We want to forcibly change the leader of another government. Let's call it what it is. Now, we did that. We did that in 1953 when we put Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi in power. That was a Western-supported, Western-aligned leader. How did that turn out for us? That ended up with the 1979 revolution to kick him out. The answer is not to put in leaders that are American puppets. The answer is to treat people and countries respectfully, respect their resources, negotiate with them to get good prices and agreements where we share resources, with the best terms we can get, but not go in, beat them over the head, take their resources and say, well, we got the best deal for us because we're taking it. That never ends well. Never has. So I'm not a fan of regime change. Number one, it's never worked in any situation I can think of. If it works temporarily, it eventually falls and you're worse off than you were before. Iran is a poster child for that.
I mean, it seemed like a lot of the people in the administration were also against this. Remember, I read those quotes at the beginning. Maybe I should read them again right now. I'm not going to, but, a lot of talk about endless war, no more endless wars, no more regime change, no more pushing democracy, all of that right down the shit.
And you know what? We have some really smart people in the government. We have some people in our foreign service. We have some people in the State Department. And if any of you are watching this, thank you for everything you're doing. They have spent their lives studying how to interact with foreign countries. They have spent their lives studying the economy and the culture of foreign countries so that they can advise our leaders better on how to interact with them. What I see us doing right now is ignoring all of them. Oh, we're just going to go in and do this. Well, yeah, that's probably not what you want to do. I think we have completely and totally misread or ignored Iranian culture and thought patterns.
Do you think that the majority of Iranians want to see a regime change?
Great question. I was talking to some of the other people on your team here earlier. We were discussing this. I read a really interesting article written by an Iranian gentleman. And he said, I'm Iranian. I live in Tehran, right? I see this every day. He said, I'm not happy with my government. My government is not representing me the way I would like. I don't want America to come in here. Because quite honestly, we've seen, and this is his opinion, we've seen what happens to countries after America comes in. And that's worse than what we have right now. Do I want our government to change? Yes. Do I want America to come in here and do it? No. That is one Iranian's opinion. that I read. But it's an interesting perception. And it starts you thinking of like, well, so what is the Iranian viewpoint right now? We see on the news women have to wear niqabs with their whole face covered, and they have no rights, and anybody can do anything at any time. But then go get on some of these other social media sites, and I'd like to look at all of them, right, as much as I can. And you get videos and things sent by teens and 20s out there having fun. They're at nightclubs dancing. They're driving. They're nothing of what we're seeing in the news. And that's when you start questioning, going, am I getting the real story? Because when I've got random people putting this out here, and I've got my official news telling me this, I come to the same cognitive dissonance we talked about before. These don't match. Somebody's not telling the truth. And I have suspicion that one of these has an agenda. One of them is just random. So I'm like, maybe we should start paying attention to this a little bit.
All right, let's take a break. If you listen to this show, you know I care about performance and what goes into my body. We should have that same standard for our dogs. But times more synthetic. No energy. Make the /S you can use order. All right, Michael, we're back from the break, and we talked a little bit about ground troops and Trump sending ground troops to Iran.
Yeah.
I want to elaborate a little bit more on that and get into some, what are the chances that we use nukes? But before we do, as of this recording today, Polymarket says there's a 16% chance that the U.S. will invade Iran by March 31st. Do you think that's a possibility?
I don't think we will.
Why?
Again, I don't think there's a military person alive that's going to tell you that it is a smart thing to invade Iran.
You don't think so?
I don't. And even people were saying, well, what if we just occupy Karg Island? Right? Some of my friends were like, well, that's their big oil production thing, so let's occupy that. I went, yeah, let's do that. Let's put all of our troops in one little area where they have no means of escape, next to a country that has one of the best missile systems in the world. That's a great idea. Let's not do that. So if it's not Karg Island, then where are we putting troops? Tehran? How do you put troops in the middle of a city? I mean, you've done military operations in urban terrain. Horrible. I mean, it's worse than the mountains. There's so many hiding places, so many places to go and do, and you clear one building, and as soon as you leave it, it's reoccupied. That's a tough thing. So we have to go back to, for what effect? What's the goal? What would be our goal in doing that, and what would we accomplish?
But I think the goal would be to topple the entire government.
That's going to be tough, because that means taking Tehran. How easy would it be somebody to take Washington, D.C. right now? I mean, you're not talking about 2,500 Marines anymore. You're talking about regiments of Army that, I mean, I can't even imagine what that would take.
I mean, I think we would destroy it from the air and then send in the ground.
Ground is always an issue.
I think that it would be tenfold worse than what Fallujah was.
But so let's play that scenario out. Let's say we do that. Well, let's say we take that as a goal. right? How much munitions and how much American military power would it take to do that? And don't forget that while we're doing this, while we are depleting our weapon systems, while we are, again, 4 billion a day, how many missiles have we fired? 2,000 some? We've got China and Russia just sitting there going, hey, go ahead, deplete your military. Because it'll take you years to recover. And while you're doing that, yeah, Ukraine is 100% ours and you can't say anything about it. Taiwan is 100% ours, and there's nothing you can do about it because you don't have any war fighting capability left. Is that capital we're willing to spend?
It appears so.
That's scary. That is scary. And you went into the, are we going to use nukes? Are we willing to nuke an entire city for what? Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we were fighting a war with that country that was attacking us. We're not doing that here. So if we're talking about using a nuclear weapon to destroy a city of millions of people, we better be ready to justify that with something. And I can't think of a justification for that. Again, talking with people, they're like, well, what about less than that? I'm like, theater tactical nukes? Okay.
What if
Same
Israel
problem.
nukes them?
Pardon?
What if Israel uses their nukes against them?
That, again, that has always been a concern. When I was in Desert Storm and Desert Shield, we were worried about Israel using nukes. And I know that Saddam fired a bunch of Scud missiles at Israel, almost trying to get them to use them. And our belief at the time was if they use nukes, then other countries are going to go after them. They're going to say no, right? Luckily, they didn't at the time. If Israel uses nukes, that's a red line that you cross, and every country in the world is going to jump in on that one. I don't think anybody's going to sit by while somebody else uses nuclear weapons and do nothing.
Definitely seems to be taboo. But, I mean, if you look at, we make a lot of these countries out to be unpredictable. I think the country that's probably the most unpredictable right now is Israel.
Without a doubt. I agree with that.
No restraint. They do anything they want, and we back them 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, did you see the school that was all girls school? Approximately 175 to 180 killed. I think 100, it was, I can't, most of those were little girls. Mm-hmm. Just like what they did in Gaza. Killed over 20,000 kids. Now we're doing it in Iran, and we're fucking backing them.
Yeah. Well, and you saw that all analysts right now point to this school in Iran being hit by a Tomahawk.
I didn't know that.
All analysts have looked at that and said, this is almost assuredly a Tomahawk missile. Only two countries are using Tomahawk missiles, the UK and us. That's the only ones we sell them to. So that was an American missile that hit that. They have videos of them going through the wreckage and finding parts that say USA on them. When the analysts have looked at the blast and whatnot, they're like, this is signature Tomahawk. That opens up a whole new can of worms. So now we're providing collateral damage to civilians for Israel. And again, I tell people all the time, don't believe me, go look it up. But yeah.
What would our strategy be, do you think, if we went to a ground war?
For a ground war?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't imagine what we would do in a ground war where we would meet any of the objectives that we're saying we want to meet. Annihilate their navy? No. Destroy their missile systems? We can do all that from the air. Why are we putting ground troops in harm? Cut off their proxy pathways? I don't need troops on the ground for that. Keep them from developing nuclear weapons? Again, I don't need ground troops for that. So I'm not sure why we would engage ground troops. I don't see the military goal that would support.
What about their water supply?
For ground troops, we could take that out from the air.
Do you think we would?
I think we run the risk of then going down the path of war crimes and collective punishment to the civilian population that is not a military target. I mean, this is what we're looking at Israel doing. I mean, they cut off all water to Gaza. They cut off food. Is that affecting the military fighting? It's affecting civilians, and we've seen the horrendous videos from there, right? That is expressly not supposed to happen under the Geneva Convention and what is it, the Second Amendment to it or whatever. But that's what they do. Everything is justifiable. The end justifies whatever means there are.
When does this end with Israel? I mean, is Iran the last one, or is Turkey going to be next?
I don't think it ever ends.
So that brings me to, what is the real goal here? Is this a holy war?
It is for Israel.
Are they trying to speed this up?
And they absolutely are. And we're going to get into a area I have to be a little bit careful of here. Is this a religious war for Israel? Yes. They believe we are the chosen people. God gave us this land. All of this land is ours. And if you are in our way, you're non-human. We can kill you, do whatever we want with you. You don't count because you're not God's chosen people. There's so many statements that support that.
I mean, just read the Epstein files. You can figure that out real fast.
Yeah, whatever it takes, right? We'll do blackmail. We'll do assassinations. Read the book, Rise and Kill First. It's just a complete dictionary of all of the assassinations that Israel does. Is Israel in any way, shape, or form interested in peace? Absolutely not. You remember, obviously, they were fighting with Hamas. Do you remember? Hamas said, we will negotiate. They were supposed to meet in Doha. Israel bombed the hotel that the negotiators were in and killed them. Well, if you're killing the negotiators, clearly you don't want to negotiate. So the goal was never peace. The goal is destruction of everybody other than Israelis. And that's always been the goal. And the Israelis have this saying, never again. And I used to think that was a very laudable, wonderful, laudable thing to say. Never again. This should never happen again. Then I realized that's not what they mean. They mean never again to us. We can do the same thing to you or others, just never again to us. Well, that turns something that should be very laudable into something that is reprehensible. It's basically saying, I count more than you do, and I can do whatever I want to you because you don't count as much as me. And you're in my way. So, where does it end? Is it a religious war? So we talked about our Congress. that constantly supports Israel. And we talked about how I said they were occupied by AIPAC. AIPAC is the tip of the iceberg, really. We talked about how AIPAC was a coordinator of funding, right? And it is. But AIPAC itself doesn't contribute that much money directly. We didn't get deep into that. There's obviously more. In 2021, AIPAC, so AIPAC is the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, right? So they just want to work on public opinion, which makes sense. Again, we have to go back and look at the history a little bit. In 1943, there was a group called the American Zionist Emergency Commission.
The American Zionist
The
Emergency
American
Commission.
Zionist Emergency, I think it was Commission. I don't remember what the C stood for, but I think it was Commission. 1943. Bad things are happening to Jews. We need an emergency committee. I think it is committee, American Zionist Emergency Committee. We need to form a group in the U.S. that is advocating to help Jews, especially in Germany, World War II, everything going on. Great. 1943, they were made. 1949, the war is over. They said it's no longer an emergency. We will rename to the American Zionist Committee. And again, I think it's committee. Anyway, so that's what they did. Now, during the 50s then, the Eisenhower administration, FARA came into effect, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, that said if you are representing another country, you have to register and be clear that you're representing a country, right? So Eisenhower was pushing hard for the American Zionist, I don't think it is committee, but anyway, group to register as a foreign agent. In 1962, Robert Kennedy's DOJ said, essentially, we're done. Register as a foreign agent or we're disbanding you. So the American Zionist group shut down, rebranded as AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs, and said, we are no longer representing a country. We're just working on public affairs. There was one guy, and I forgot his name, but he was the head of the AZC, and he was a registered foreign agent himself. And then when they formed AIPAC, they said, okay, we don't want you to be part of AIPAC because we don't want to have to register. So this is the genesis of AIPAC. AIPAC was the American Zionist Committee. It's not committee, though. I can't remember what it was, but group. That is their genesis. That is how they were formed. And they then started, they didn't register as a foreign agent. And then they started, though, coordinating how they could influence people. Well, in 2021, they said, we're not doing enough. So in 2021, they formed the AIPAC PAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee Political Action Group that would then directly fund people. They also started another group called United Democracy Project. What doesn't sound good about that? It's united. It's democracy. The United Democracy Project. They are a super PAC, which means they don't have to report who they gave money to or how much. Wasn't that convenient? Nowhere in their brochures do they mention AIPAC. But the only people they fund are people that are supportive of Israel. In our Congress right now, 80
What is this organization again?
The United Democracy Project.
The United Democracy Project.
Correct. Yeah, look them up.
I will.
They're a super PAC. They're run by AIPAC. So we've got AIPAC, AIPAC PAC, and the United Democracy Project. 80 of our congressmen list APAC, APAC-PAC, or UDP, United Democracy Project, as the largest primary funder of their campaigns. Tell me we're not occupied and being controlled by Israel. Now, there's other groups. There's hundreds of these groups. This is kind of like swarm technology. What's harder to defend against, one incoming missile or 100? It's hard to shoot down a swarm. It's hard to get your hands around a lot of smaller groups that are all doing different things. And any one group, you can't say, well, that's bad. So again, United Democracy Project, it sounds good. The other one is the American Israeli Education Foundation. Education's good. We can all agree that education is good, right? Well, what does it fund? The only thing it funds is trips for congressmen and senators to go to Israel.
Are you shitting?
That's all it funds. And almost every congressman and senator is gone. They have free, all expense paid trips to take them to Israel, parade them around and show them how wonderful Israel is, not going into Gaza or West Bank, and then send them home. That is the American Israeli Education Foundation.
We got one of those letters.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Oh, they want you to go see. Let us show you how good we are.
I'm sorry. I don't need any more fucking propaganda.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was from that organization. I can't remember. But
like I said, there are hundreds of them. There are so many small organizations that by their name and everything, they sound good, but it all is all going towards the same effect. It's going towards getting the U.S. to spend their money and send their sons and daughters in harm's way to Israel. You just can't get around that. And now we're going to get into something that's a little sensitive.
oh boy, this wasn't sensitive.
No.
Because the product was so easy to use, I kept on purchasing more to do more projects, like my mailbox, the fence, the gate. It goes on.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm talking with my wife and we're discussing this. She's like, don't go there. And I'm like, yeah, but how can you not?
Mm-hmm.
There's 6 to 7 million Jews in the United States. That means they're about 2% of the population. Not huge. They're 10 to 12% of Congress, which right away says they're overrepresented by, 5 to 1 at least. But that's not where the money is. That's not where the influence is. That's not enough to get our congressmen to listen and do whatever they want them to do. So here we start looking at the numbers, and we get to Christian Zionists, Christians who believe Jews have to take over and own and run Israel for the second coming. And until that happens, we're stuck here on earth. Christian Zionists represent about 25% of the United States.
25%?
Yeah. Most of the evangelical Christians that are Christian Zionists, about 25%. So start looking at that. Now the politicians are paying attention. And that's why you've got, like Ted Cruz coming out and saying, God commanded us to support Israel. He's a Christian Zionist. You've got Biden that came out and said, I am a Zionist. Not because, he's Jewish. He's a Christian Zionist. He believes that Israel must exist. Jews must be in charge of Jerusalem in order for the second coming. And that's what the Christian Zionists want. And it's another one of those things where follow the money, follow the votes. follow, why are our congressmen doing this? They need those votes. This gets even more salient when you start looking at in our elections, how many people actually vote? Of voting age, how many voters actually vote? Sadly, 50 to 60%. Well, if 25% are Christian Zionists, and they're we have to make sure this happens. Only 50% vote, but 25% are Christian Zionists. All of a sudden, you're looking at 40 to 50% of the voting population voting in this way. That's what congressmen and senators are looking at. And this is something that isn't brought up very often.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep going down the rabbit hole a little further.
Keep going.
So, why do Christian Zionists believe that Jews have to be in Jerusalem for the second coming? And the big answer to that is something called the Scofield Bible. We all know the King James Bible. If you've ever read the King James Bible, it's written, it is a translation. It's hard to read through. And there's a lot of background information you don't have, right? Unless you actually study each book and say, why was this book written? Like this was Paul's letter to this people because Paul was told these people were doing this. So Paul wrote them a letter that said, this is what you should be doing, right? A lot of people don't understand that. They just figure the entire Bible is the Word of God. You're like, well, no, it's a bunch of books made up of Paul and others writing about this, right? But it's hard to read. I have trouble reading it. I've read through it, but sometimes it's a slog to get through it. In 1909, a guy named Cyrus Scofield wrote a reference Bible. And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to translate this a little into more modern English so it's more accessible to people. And I'm going to give them my interpretation of what this means. There's the tough part. The Scofield Bible is one man's interpretation of what it means. And this has been like one of the best-selling Bibles other than the King James for decades. He published it in 1909. It was picked up by a guy named Untermeyer, who was a lawyer in New York, a Jewish Zionist. And he gave it to all of the book clubs. He gave it to the influential people in New York to try and get it more and more published because it supported the Zionist cause. Because he would take comments like Genesis 12:3 that says, I will bless those who bless us and I will curse those who curse us. That statement, Scofield took and said, this means we have to support Jews in Israel forever. I'm like, that's a pretty big stretch to take that from this, but that's what the Scofield Bible says it means. So that's what the Christian Zionists believe, that line in Genesis means we have to support Jews forever.
Who is this guy? Is this guy a rabbi or something?
Cyrus Scofield. Cyrus Scofield is not a rabbi. He was a Christian. But he